Welcome, everyone. Ron Denner, your host for Personal Growth Recipes. Today, I picked a pretty good subject. I like food. We all do, I'm sure. But I chose this for a specific reason. And my real subject to lead into this is eat to live, don't live to eat. So let's get into this. Back in 2017, I organized a small group at our church to study eating healthier, losing weight. We chose the Daniel Plan as our guide. Now, I came across the Daniel Plan while searching for physical health involving food and exercise. You see, for me personally, I've exercised for over 40 years, and I've got this part down pretty good. But I didn't have the food part down as well as I thought, as it turns out. Matter of fact, I knew very little about the impact that our food choices have on our health. What I've learned is that you get older, and trust me on this, as you get older, you cannot exercise your way to health or lose weight just by exercising. Exercise is very important, but it's food. The choices we make with our food is the key. I'm telling you, it's the key. So let's talk about the Daniel Plan. It was developed by a gentleman by the name of Rick Warren. Rick Warren is a pastor at Saddleback Church, a very large church in California. And what happened was back, this is probably 15 years ago, he was baptizing over 800 people in a weekend. So he would lift them up out of the water. And after quite a few of these, he realized, man alive, a lot of these people are fat. And he realized himself he was fat. So he decided to take action. So what he did, he organized a team of physicians, personal trainers, dietitians, and they came up, did lots of research, and they came up with the Daniel Plan. So where did the name actually come from? Well, the Daniel Plan is named after Daniel. Daniel was a character from the Old Testament in the Bible. Now, I remember this specific story and whatnot when I used to teach Sunday school, but I never drew the connection between Daniel and food at the time. And what actually happened was, this is in the Old Testament, the nation of Israel was taken captive by Babylonia. And Babylonia, by the way, is present-day Iraq, to give you some perspective. And when Babylonia captured the nation of Israel, they made them pretty much into slaves to do their work, labor for their country. But the king realized he needed to take some of these Israelite people and pick out a few that were leaders. And one of those he chose was Daniel. And one of the perks of being chosen by the king as a leader was that you got to eat at the king's table. So they got to eat the Babylonian food. And unfortunately, the food was very rich, not good, very, very unhealthy. And Daniel realized this. So what he did was he issued a challenge, a 90-day challenge to the king. What Daniel said was, let me eat my normal diet, which was fruits, vegetables, nuts, and see how I look and compare myself to your men after 90 days. So the king took him up on that offer. And lo and behold, after 90 days, Daniel was in much better health, looked much better physically. And that was an awakening for the king. So at that point, actually, the king of Babylonia actually changed their whole diet to match what Daniel did. And that's really where the Daniel Plan came from originally. It's got a biblical context to it. What we did, we organized back in 2017 a group of about 12 people at our church. And we studied it and implemented the Daniel Plan. And we set goals for ourselves as a group and individually. And I can tell you, almost to the T, we averaged per person about 4.7 pounds, just under 5, per person in weight that we lost during those roughly 40 days. So for me, I realized at that point in time, this thing works. So it was kind of neat. So before we get into the how part of this, I want to talk about the why part of this. Why is this kind of a big deal? Well, if you look around right now just in the United States, and honestly, all you have to do is look around. I'm not picking on anybody specifically, but about 7 out of 10 Americans are overweight. 7 out of 10. A bigger concern, the effect on our health system and our health in general. Diabetes, heart disease, cancer now kill more people than infectious disease. And for the first time in human history, as many people are suffering from overeating as malnutrition. What you want to think about is this. Food is actually medicine. Food is actually the most powerful drug on the planet. Now, that sounds kind of like a wild thing to say, but when you consider what we spend on medications, prescriptions, food can actually be a positive drug for us. I'll get into that here. It can cure a lot of our chronic diseases. Look at the effect chronic diseases are having on our country as a whole. And it's going to get worse, as each generation, unless we reverse this process. In the United States today, we are literally eating ourselves to death. Most Americans are actually confused about food. Have you ever stopped to think about what food really is? You really think about it? Why we eat it and what it does to us when we eat it? The link between food and how we feel is so immediate, so profound, yet most of us have no idea that how we feel is linked to what we eat. Our moods and our energy are driven by the food that we put into our bodies. The majority of doctors have never really studied food. When doctors go to medical school, they're there to study medicine and treat diseases. They're not trained to look at preventive before the fact. So this stuff is kind of foreign to them. And that's unfortunate that the medical industry has never caught up to this. The food industry is not designed to deliver the most healthy food to us, and I'll be getting into that also. What's the main culprit? What is the really number one culprit in our food supply right now? It's sugar, pure and simple, sugar. The catch is that sugar has many different names, but the number one ingredient is something called high fructose corn syrup. You're going to hear me talk about that a few times. High fructose corn syrup. It's really just a form of sugar. How this came about, this is kind of an interesting thing here. If you think about it, it makes sense. The agricultural industry is subsidized by the U.S. government. And the main reason it's subsidized is to keep food prices low, which is a good intent, okay? Nothing wrong with that. But the problem it created is this, unintended consequences here. The resulting low cost of wheat, corn, and soybeans has resulted in the food manufacturers being able to produce this high fructose corn syrup at a very low cost. And because of that, the food manufacturers now are able to access this at a much lower cost to put into their products. So it had a negative consequential effect. To give you some perspective, over the last 40 plus years, we've seen an explosion in products that contain this high fructose corn syrup. It's actually now the biggest source of calories in the American diet. And to give you some perspective on this, back in 1800, this kind of surprised me actually, but I suppose they never had access to this stuff that we do. Back in 1800, the average person in the U.S. consumed five pounds of sugar. That's it for the whole year. Today, the average person consumes about 150 pounds of sugar. You can see we've gone from 5 to 150. And the real problem there is that our bodies are simply not designed to handle that much sugar. We're just not. Now, once again, here's a comparison for you. The average 16-ounce soda has about 13 and a half teaspoons of sugar. These kinds of drinks now make up about 15% of the calories that the average person consumes in a day. One can of soda a day, just one, will increase a kid's risk of obesity by 60% and a woman's chance of getting diabetes by more than 80%. Just one can of soda per day. Think about that. But there's some other dangers out there. There's refined or processed white foods that spike blood sugar, but we don't think of them as sugar. You know, back in the day, I used to love Sunbeam bread. Put the butter on there, Sunbeam bread, good old Sunbeam bread. Worst thing you can put in your body, okay? They're made basically from white flour, or if you have a white rice, white pasta. What these white foods will do is they actually act as sugar. They'll turn to sugar once you eat them in your bodies. What we really want to do, we want to substitute with better options such as bread that's made from whole kernel, rye or brown or black rice. And since 1950, there's been more than 600,000 products added in the marketplace, and they're full of sugar. Kind of depressing, right? It's in everything: bread, ketchup, salad dressings. Sugar, unfortunately, it triggers, here's what it actually does, sugar. It triggers a whole cascade of problems that make us sick and fat. When you consume too much sugar, your blood, first thing is your blood sugar is going to spike. And this causes your insulin levels to spike. And what this then does is it increases something called insulin resistance. And then this is where your cells literally become numb to the effects of insulin, which requires more and more insulin to keep your blood sugar normal. This is the result. This is the really the effect of all age-related chronic diseases that we see. You know, there's a lot of heart disease, high blood pressure, stroke, cancer, type 2 diabetes, dementia, all related to too much sugar, inflammation. Bottom line is this: sugar should be an occasional treat. And when you have sugar, what you really want to try to stick with traditional forms such as raw honey, natural fruit sugars, and even pure maple syrup. We really want to stay away from all the rest. You really want to avoid all these hidden problems. And I can't say this enough, read the labels. Read the labels. We also tend to think that added sugar is mainly found in desserts like cakes, cookies, things like that, the sweets, right? But it's also found, like I said, in many, many other foods like bread and pasta sauce. Matter of fact, manufacturers add to their products, sugar is added to about 75% of all the products that are manufactured today. So even if, you and I think we're being good, disciplined, we're skipping dessert, not necessarily, okay? And the other thing that kind of compounds this problem, there's over 61 different names for sugar on these ingredients, on these items in the store. So how do you tell, that it's hard to even tell what you're getting. Some of the more common names to watch for, though, that you're going to see would be sucrose. We talked about high fructose corn syrup, barley malt, dextrose, maltose, and rice syrup, among others. Bottom line, read the labels. Here's a simple formula that helps me when I shop and go to the store or whatnot. Most ingredients are listed in grams. So let's do the conversion. 1 teaspoon of sugar is about 4 grams. 1 teaspoon, 4 grams. For the average woman, it's recommended that the average woman consume about 24 grams of sugar, which is about 6 teaspoons of sugar. So 24 for a woman. A man, it's recommended 36 grams, which is about 9 teaspoons. So 36 grams for a man. For children, it's recommended anywhere from 12 to 24, depending on their age. The older, the more they could probably do. Once again, to give you some perspective on how we can get way off track on this, take a 16-ounce Coke, 54 grams of sugar. Just on one 16-ounce can of Coke, you're over your whole limit for the day. And if a child has a bowl of cereal, growing up, I think we did our share of that. Just one bowl of cereal with sugar will put that child over their limit for just that day, the whole day. Okay? And if you can really start counting those grams, that and keep that in mind as you go through this, and use that as a kind of a guide, okay? I think it will help you. But really read those labels and start counting the sugar. Sugar is a big one. And it's very deceiving, because I'll give you another example. Here's some common items found in a supermarket. There's a leading brand of yogurt. Now, we think yogurt is good for us, right? Yogurt's pretty healthy. Well, that single brand contains 29 grams of sugar. A breakfast bar, considered healthy, right? Breakfast bars. One breakfast bar that's made with real fruit, whole grains, 15 grams of sugar. Not good. A single serving of bran cereal with raisins in a box, 20 grams of sugar. So even though they appear to be healthy foods, not necessarily. Another thing that I've seen or come across, you see these food items that have the American Heart Association logo, the Healthy Heart logo on the side. Don't assume that's good necessarily. Here's why. The American Heart Association, unfortunately, receives a lot of their financial support from the food manufacturers, particularly a couple examples, General Mills and Kellogg's. In return for their generous donation, the AHA, American Heart Association, gives them the right to use that logo on their food items. So just something to be aware of. Back in 1992, the U.S. government introduced the infamous food pyramid. We're probably, a lot of us are familiar with the food pyramid. What we now realize is that the food pyramid's completely wrong. And I'm going to get into that. The original basis of those recommendations was that they assumed most people needed more nutrition, not less. That makes sense. We need more nutrition. So calories, in order to achieve that goal of more nutrition, calories had to be maximized for both cost and density. So what's typically the best way to get the most calorie bang for the buck? Carbohydrates. It also stressed eating low-fat foods, and it encouraged Americans to make food choices that prioritize consuming carbohydrates. And this resulted in our diets being dominated by sugar and starches. The food industry jumped on the bandwagon, and they rolled out foods loaded with starch and sugar. Makes sense. But here's the tricky part of this. The research that was done prior to the food pyramid being introduced, guess who did it? The food manufacturers, and also the Sugar Association, which is a lobbying group for the sugar industry. So a little conflict of interest there, maybe. But what their research did is they blamed the coronary heart disease and other health problems on too much fat in our diet. That is simply one of the biggest lies ever pulled on the American public. The research has now shown that a low-fat diet is not good for us. A low-fat diet is simply not good for us. And the real main culprit is sugar. Now, there's also two kinds of fats that are bad for us. Trans fats and processed and refined vegetable oils. Trans fats are poisons, and next to high fructose corn syrup, they should be avoided. You should. There's no reason to ever eat trans fats. Where do you see these? Well, they're generally we talked about the inside aisles, right, of the store. They're there to preserve the shelf life. You ever wonder why, what do they say, the Hostess Ho-Hos and things like that can last for months and probably years? It's because of trans fats that give them that shelf life for forever, it seems. The other thing, you want to avoid processed and refined vegetable oils. They're also known as hydrogenated fats. You want to try to avoid those too. So a couple other items besides sugar. Okay, here's a simple rule of thumb when shopping at the store, at the grocery store. The inside aisles are typically loaded with preservatives, the things that give that shelf life, and they have almost very, very minimal nutrients in them, the inside aisles. What you really want to try to focus on are the outside aisles of the grocery store. You're going to find much more healthy, nutritional items on the outside aisles of the grocery store. Simple thing to think about. So we've talked about what to avoid and why. Now let's talk about what we need to do and why. I'm going to start off with what's probably a surprise for most of you on this why part. That's the subject of sleep. That's right, sleep. Now, the starting point to health is energy level. And it's going to take good energy to follow through on a plan like this because, you know, to maintain, and I've tried, I hate the word diet. I don't use that vocabulary. But to change your eating habits, it's going to take some discipline. And if you're tired and run down, you won't follow through, period. Healthy people simply manage their energy. And I love this line. Energy management is more important than time management. Why? Because we all have the same amount of time. It's a level playing field. We do not have the same amount of energy. Especially, trust me, as you get older, energy is a big deal, okay? There's two things you got to put into your life if you're going to manage your energy for the rest of your life. Those two things are rest and exercise. Simple. What exercise does is it creates energy. Well, let's talk about rest and why sleep matters. Now, there was a study done by the University of Chicago. They put a group of people on a calorie-restricted diet. Okay, let them sleep for 8 hours. They kept track of their weight and everything. Took the same group of people, same calorie-restricted diet, cut their sleep back to 5 hours. So they're a little sleep deprived, right? What they discovered was the people that got 8 hours of sleep burned 55% more body fat than when they only got 5 hours of sleep. So you can see energy, sleep, whatever, big deal. Exercising, what I've discovered too by exercising regularly, you sleep better. It does affect you, okay? Some people, there's no right or wrong right time to exercise, whatever, just as long as you do something, okay? Another thing that has helped me, I would recommend, and there's been some scientific research on this, is to, before you go to bed at night, usually an hour and a half, try to stay off your laptop, stay off your iPad, even phones. That light that's emitted can cause something in our brains that make it difficult for us to fall asleep. And what I've done, I try to read out of a positive book. That's the best thing I've come across, okay? The mental part of this is just as important as the physical side. Now, the Daniel plan is not so much of a lifestyle change as it is a lifestyle improvement. I like that term. When we think of the word change, that's too dramatic. Just think of it as a lifestyle improvement instead of a change. And one thing I did, my goal when I got into the Daniel plan for the 40-day period, I set a goal to lose 10 pounds. 10 pounds. And what helped me, I like things that are more emotional. So I found a picture of myself years before at about when I was 10 pounds lighter at that time. And I kept looking at this picture on a daily basis. And just doing that gave me the incentive, the reminder. It helped me, okay? You don't have to do that, but it's just one little tidbit that did help me, okay? It's just repetition's the key on anything like that. Another important consideration is your network of friends. We have a social network of friends, if you think about it, in our social life, at work, church, you name it. And what they discovered, they actually did a survey on this, that if you exercise or do a plan like this, the Daniel plan, with a group of your friends, it can just be one other person even, you statistically have twice as much chance of following through. It's encouraging each other, accountability. Now, some people can do it solo, okay? They don't need that extra person there to help them, whatever, or a group of people, but do it with a group of people. It'll increase, really, literally, you got twice as much of a chance for it to be effective. One last thing about this whole thing is to practice gratitude. Now, that may sound, what does that got to do with eating, losing weight, whatever? In my opinion, gratitude is the most single important quality that you can develop and maintain. The most important person to love is yourself. Life's difficult, and you're going to have some big curveballs thrown at you. Think about it. There's going to be financial setbacks, relationship setbacks, your job. There's a multitude of problems that come at us daily. The bullets are flying, as they say. Expressing gratitude, what it really does is helps us shift our mindset to appreciation. So what I do, personally for me, I start each day, I just sit on the couch for 10, 20, 15, 20 minutes, and I just think about the little things that I'm thankful for. The negative crap is still there. It's just not as important. And I can't overemphasize how important gratitude, and once you get into that habit, it's not just for this specifically, but it'll help you. It'll set the stage for your whole day. Big deal. Whenever you feel yourself, the stress coming at you, just sit down, find a quiet place and practice it. Works. So let's get into the specifics of the Daniel plan. I'm just going to give you an overview on this. Okay? I'm not going to get real detailed. I just want to give you an overview. Now, if you think about it, I'm only going to talk about 2 meals a day here. Noontime and at nighttime. I'm not going to talk about breakfast. By the way, don't skip breakfast. Big mistake. Don't skip breakfast, okay? It'll speed up your metabolism, actually. The guidelines for any meal is this: 50% non-starchy vegetables, 25% healthy animal or vegetable proteins, and 25% healthy starch or whole grains, and water or herbal teas. So picture this. Just picture a plate. So 50% of it, half of that plate would be non-starchy vegetables. 25% of that plate is healthy animal or vegetable proteins. And the other 25% is healthy starch or whole grains. Now, scientific research has shown that the most important thing that we can do for our health is to eat more vegetables and fruits. And these, I'm going to give you some simple examples: asparagus, bell peppers, broccoli, cauliflower, collard greens, cucumbers, green beans, kale, spinach, zucchini, many others. Okay, and what these represent, these are the main source of vitamins and minerals for our body. The fiber in these foods is also very helpful for us. Do you realize the average American gets about 8 to 12 grams of fiber, and we're supposed to get about 30 to 50 grams of fiber per day. So we're getting to a third to a fourth of the fiber that we're supposed to have. The reason that's a big deal, fiber helps your digestive system function better. So that once again helps everything work better. Lowers cholesterol, that sort of thing. One other thing, I'm going to kind of get off to the side here a little bit. I want to talk about what I call the calorie myth. The calorie myth. The calorie myth says if I just watch my calories, that's good enough. Well, let me reiterate, not necessarily. Not all calories are the same. I'll give you two side-by-side examples here. Once again, if we talk about a 20-ounce soda, let's take that as an example. That has about 240 calories. It's loaded with sugar, about 15 teaspoons of sugar in that puppy. And it'll spike your blood sugar, causing a host of health problems. Now take that and compare it similarly to broccoli. Now it would take about 7.5 cups of broccoli to equal 240 calories. Now I challenge anybody to eat 7.5 cups of broccoli in the first place. I think I could probably get up to 4 or 5 and I'd be full. But 7.5 cups of broccoli is 240 calories, about a half a teaspoon of sugar. It's full of vitamins and minerals. And it literally creates health rather than destroys it. So you see the same calories, but very different results. So don't just rely on calories. So that we talked about the 50% of starchy, non-starchy vegetables. Now you also want to have 25% starch or whole grains. And these include beets, brown or black rice, carrots, green peas, corn, quinoa, sweet potatoes, turnips, water squash. Now these starchy plant foods definitely have a place in a healthy diet. The only challenge with some of these, they're sweeter, and for some people they can't eat some of these. I know some of us can't eat corn, digest it, so it's not everything we can eat, but these are full of antioxidants, which help our immune system. And whole grains can be part of this also. For me personally, I love oatmeal. So what I'll do is I'll have rolled oats in the morning as part of my oatmeal. Very good. The last part of the puzzle, 25% healthy animal or vegetable proteins. What do we mean by that? Beans, beef, chicken, fish, nuts, seeds, turkey. And one word of advice, when choosing beef, chicken, or turkey, you want to try to find something that's organic, grass-fed, and free of hormones, if you can. You know, eggs were given a bad rap for a long time. Just don't eat a dozen at a time, right? But 1 or 2, I usually have about 2 eggs every morning. Eggs are full of protein. It's a good start for the day. No sugar. And another good source of protein, nuts. Nuts are a wonderful source of protein. They have good fats that are good for us. I use nuts as a snack a lot of times now instead of my favorite for years, Frito-Lay potato chips. I love Frito-Lays. You know, there's an ingredient in Frito-Lays I discovered that it causes your taste buds to want to eat more. That's why I would sit down and almost eat the whole bag. But there's something in there that causes that. But I just replaced it with there's macadamia nuts, walnuts, pecans. I love cashews. You want to avoid salted ones, so stay away from the salt if you can. What about drinks? Well, soda and sport drinks are super highways to obesity. Stay away from them. There's no need to ever go near them. The best option is just pure, clean water. Now, there's been a lot of how much water should I drink? A lot of different opinions or whatever. The one I've come across that makes the most sense is about 100 ounces of water per day. Very simple. If you think about it, a bottled water comes in 16.9 ounces. So you're talking 5 to 6 of those per day. If you can do that you're doing good. You'll go to the bathroom a lot. I can tell you that. But they've also discovered, this is kind of a big deal to give you encouragement to drink more water, that your metabolism runs about a 33% higher rate when you drink that much water or close to it. And also it helps there's other benefits. If you suffer from headaches, that can be an issue if you're not drinking enough water. And especially if you exercise intensely, whatever, you should consider that too, more water. Coffee's okay. A cup or two in the morning is what I usually do. You want to avoid too much coffee, though, because once again, too much can raise your blood pressure. And there's a thing called a caffeine hangover, and that can actually cause fatigue later in the day. So try not to do too much. Like I say, a lot of people my wife likes tea. Tea's very good for you. I know that. Green tea especially. And with your water, too, add lemon or lime to it if you're bored with the taste. So that's pretty much the wrap for this. I've included a lot during this episode. I just really wanted to touch on an overview. But really what I encourage you to do, this is a tough one. Just take this one step at a time. Everything really begins with self-awareness. And, being aware of how our country got to this point as a whole. Don't beat yourself up how us individually got to this point. We're here. We just need to change. If we really want to change, we need to change. Okay. Great saying, change is not change until it's change. And acting on the knowledge is the big thing. Knowledge is power, but acting on it is the key here. I found, for me personally, that the Daniel plan was one of the most comprehensive things that I found, because it covered the mental, physical, spiritual side of this. There's more to it than just food. And what I would recommend that you do, there is a website and it's free. It's called thedanielplan.com. Thedanielplan.com. It's full of information, stuff you can print out, videos, YouTube videos. They keep adding to it. So that's very helpful. And I appreciate your time. That's it. I really appreciate it. This is my podcast on let's get that right. Eating to live and not living to eat. We don't want to switch that around. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to like and share and leave a comment down below. Follow me on Twitter at Ron Denner. Follow me on Instagram at DennerRon. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, Ron Denner. And subscribe to my personal growth recipes on Apple Podcasts. And please give us a 5-star rating if you have been enjoying it. And also, please like and share our Facebook page, Personal Growth Recipes. And be sure to tune in next Wednesday for my upcoming podcast. This is Ron Denner, your host for Personal Growth Recipes, serving